The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back talking vintage ball in the zone, vintage sports in the zone. I've got four mavens with us. Alan Blumkin is here.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Alan. Yeah. David Hubler is here.
Good day. Good day to all.
Good day, David. Hal Bock, Associated Press guy.
I'm here.
Good. And George Case III. Hello,
hi, everybody.
George.
Always enjoyable for me to talk with everybody.
Oh, yeah. I listen to your shows, and it's heartwarming. You know, the standard podcast is at best one-on-one. Anything more than that, they consider to be too many people in the booth. Not so with you guys. You've got it down. You don't step on each other, and it's going to be a great show. David, if you take over and lead us, and you guys enjoy each other's company tonight. David,
okay, thanks, Ralph. Right out the bat, this is probably one of the most unusual spring training camps in baseball in perhaps 40 years or more. And we have two interesting topics to start off. One, of course, is the Astros cheating in 2017 and 2018, and we're not sure about 2019. But the other topic is also of interest, and that is suddenly the change in relief pitching, where the relief pitcher has to pitch to a minimum of 3 batters or until the third out is made. So I thought we could start with Rob Manfred's remarks Sunday, if you saw them or read them in the paper, about the Astros and the cheating, and his explanation as to why the players were not penalized and why, for example, no independent counsel was selected to review this whole situation. It was all done in-house, so to speak. So whoever wants to start, and we'll go from there.
I'll start, David, because I did a podcast with Ralph last Thursday, and this was one of the prime topics. This, of course, is before Manfred's statements. Now, let me say one thing before we start, that the purpose of a commissioner, especially in baseball, basketball, and hockey I don't know about, is twofold. One is public relations, and the second is making money for the owners. And that's it. I had a discussion with a friend of mine last night, because I've insisted that the reason that the MLB wanted to cut this off at the managerial level is they didn't want to involve the union.
Right.
Okay, and this friend of mine said that Manfred gave another reason, and he says he believes Manfred. And I said, why? And I gave him the whole thing I just said, that PR and making money are the only two things that they're responsible for. The only time they act against an owner is like what they did with Kuhn did with Finley in 1976, preventing the sales of Rudy Fingers and Blue. But in order to do that act, he must have had this overwhelming support of the rest of the owners. And so I wouldn't believe Manfred or Selig or Kuhn or any of those types if they told me tomorrow was Wednesday.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. One of the points made in this article reporting on Manfred's statement was referring to Jose Altuve's home run in the 6th game of the against the Yankees to clinch the championship series, and Manfred said that he and said Major League Baseball investigated those claims that Altuve had some sort of device on his chest that would give him the signs of what pitch was coming. And Manfred said they investigated the claims and found no validity to them, but acknowledged that he could not be sure, 100% sure, they were not true. And that's where he left it. I mean, that doesn't seem like much of an investigation to me.
Yeah, well, David, I agree with you. And let me just say this. Who were the so-called investigators? I mean, for crying out loud, we've seen on television, so many times the replay of that. Altuve running home, telling his teammates, "Don't rip off my shirt," heading directly into the clubhouse to do what? To change his damn shirt and come back out again. So I'd like to know who the so-called investigators are, because I think it's like Alan said earlier, I think it's a PR move. That's what I think.
Well, I mean, just the thought of the guy hits a game-winning, championship season-ending home run in the visitor's ballpark, and he runs into the clubhouse to get now even under the a game-winning home run in April, a clincher in the ninth inning requires all the players to come out and jump up and down and congratulate the guy who hit the home run. Here was a really important home run, and he runs right into the dugout, into the clubhouse.
Right.
I mean, that sounds awfully and looks awfully suspicious.
I would say, David, I'm going to be a devil's advocate here. I mean, I hate the whole idea about electronic sign stealing. The sign stealing is part of baseball. That's been true, and it's been years and years and years. But this is a whole new dimension. And I'm just impartial observer watching this and saying there's no way that Altuve can come in. First of all, he somehow got the signal because he knew a curveball was coming, and he waited on it, and he hit the damn thing out. I mean, that's, if you're going to guess on a pitch, that's one thing. But if you're being told that pitch is coming, then you get set and you're ready for it. You're going to hit the breaking ball, and you're going to swing. Your swing is totally different than if you're trying to catch up with a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. So, my own opinion is that Altuve was very guilty of it. He knew what he had, and he had to get rid of the evidence, and so he did it. Now, as far as Manfred is concerned, I agree with what Alan said. I mean, he's the commissioner, and he serves at the favor of the owners. And the owners don't want to lose all kinds of money and players. What are you going to do? You're going to suspend players? You're going to kick them out of the league? What happens to their long-term contracts? They're paying these guys multi-million dollars for X amount of years. And what do you do then? You void all those contracts? So, I mean, it throws the whole, situation, as far as I'm concerned, in Major League Baseball into an upheaval. And I just picked up a couple articles in the local papers. Larry Boa, the longtime player with the Phillies and managers, he said, you know what, Major League pitchers, they'll do whatever they want to do. They're going to stick a ball in somebody's ribs, and that ball player is probably going to be one of those Houston Astros players. They're not going to try to maim them, but they're going to let them know that they're not happy with the situation, and Major League Baseball players will do that. So now what's going to happen is that the umpires, are they going to start throwing pitchers out for throwing at batters? I mean, to me, you're opening up a Pandora's box. It's a huge problem for baseball, and I'm not sure that I have any idea what's going to happen. But I know, and Hal's mentioned this before, I mean, this ruins the whole integrity of Major League Baseball, as far as I'm concerned.
There's no question about it, George. This is going to be an ugly season. Not only are we going to have frontier justice with pitchers throwing at the Houston hitters, but you're going to see guys coming into second base when Altuve's covering, and the spikes will be high, and the same thing for Correa at second base. There's going to be a lot of ugliness this summer, and I regret that because it damages the game. My problem is with Manfred. Yeah, you can't suspend all the players because who's going to play? You're going to bring up the AAA players? I mean, that's not right. No, you can't do that. But you do have to punish them in some way, shape, or form. And I had lunch today with a guy who used to work for the Mets, no longer does, and we were kicking that around. And I said to him, the thing that's probably most important to players these days isn't the money, because the money is so outrageous. Who needs more money? I mean, Garrett Cole is making $345 million, you know. What's most important to these players is the ring. And my feeling is that Manfred could demand all of the World Series rings be returned. That would be a nice punishment for these guys who disrespected the game, who violated the rules of the game. I think they have to be punished. Now, I understand that Manfred gave them immunity in order to get their testimony so he could get to the bottom of the thing, but you still have to punish them in some way, shape, or form. And I think that would be an interesting way to do it. So I'm open to discussion there.
Yeah, that's a novel approach to it. One of the things I was thinking about, Manfred seemed to just sort of jump in and decide how this investigation was going to work. You know, he said the most important thing was to send a message to the fans that they were not going to tolerate this anymore, or at least tolerate it ever again. But that's not really what the message that the fans have received. A lot of fans have received a message that, okay, it happened, we're just going to ignore it and try to keep going with the game. And whatever happens to the Astros individually or collectively, that's up to them. That they'll have to live with this terrible scar. Well, they will, of course, but I think Hal hit upon a really good solution, because it's true. The one thing that all of these players want these days is that ring.
Then there was the suggestion that you take away the trophy, the World Series trophy from 2017, and the commissioner referred to it as a piece of metal. Well, he ought to have metal in his head to disrespect the World Series trophy that way. I mean, I can't believe that he said that, you know. It's just so bizarre to disrespect the trophy that, by the way, is called the commissioner's trophy in that manner. He doesn't display the understanding of the significance of that trophy. And that's troublesome to me. But also, and equally troublesome, and we'll probably get into this at some point, we have this scandal hanging over our heads from the Houston Astros. We're going to have another shoe is going to drop eventually with the Boston Red Sox, because
right.
That thing is pending. And into all of this, he comes up with a plan to expand the playoffs to 14 teams, and teams get to choose their opponents, and we'll play baseball until Thanksgiving. Are you out of your mind?
That's a distraction, Hal. That's a distraction.
Of course. Of course it is.
Another sidebar I had with a friend of mine who thinks that they should be any of the players should be banned from the Hall of Fame. And I told him basically if they find that Altuve and some of these other players who have numbers over the years, I said they'll treat you, let them on the ballot, they'll be treated the same way as the steroid users. The players just will not.
Which really isn't fair. I don't think that's really fair to do that. I mean, the steroid users went at it for year in and year out. I mean, and these guys were part of a team where cheating was expected, it was encouraged, and it was laid out for them. So I just think that's a little unfair. But I like Hal's suggestion the best, but it's not up to me. I think I would be very interested to know, of course we can't, but it would be interesting to know if someone like a former ball player, like a Joe Torre, let's say, was actually the commission, how he would react to his game being sullied like this.
That's why ball players aren't commissioners.
Well, it doesn't take much, apparently, to be a commissioner.
I want to ask.
Well, you know what? Hey, guys, I just wanted to chime in with one thing. We talked earlier in previous podcast about, the fact of analytics, and you got a bunch of MBAs and all that kind of stuff. And I'm looking at that and saying, okay, Manfred, I don't know what his baseball background is, but I'm sure he's got an office staff with a bunch of MBAs, and they're telling him, yeah, Commissioner, this is the way we should do this, and this way we should do that. He doesn't have the baseball knowledge. I agree with what Hal's saying, and Alan and David. I mean, he's not a former ball player. He's an executive, and he doesn't have the feeling that a fan would have or a player would have, and I would like to see somebody like a Joe Torre or somebody, whether it be in the commissioner's office or as the commissioner or something, but there's got to be somebody at the top with some strength and some knowledge of the game, as far as I'm concerned, and the history of the game, and to call the commissioner's World Series trophy a piece of metal, I mean, that's a joke. That's ridiculous.
Do any of you think that this is worse than the Black Sox scandal?
I think it's the worst since the Black Sox scandal.
Yes, I would agree with you there, Hal.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's worse than the PED scandal. I think it's worse than Pete Rose. I think Pete Rose has a good argument asking to be reinstated, because what he did, to me, wasn't nearly as sinister as what these guys did.
No, true. I agree with you.
He guessed, I'm going to guess that my team or that team is going to win that game. That's, he was guessing. He didn't know for sure, but they made sure that they would win the games. I mean, that's outrageous. It's so offensive to me, I can't begin to describe it.
Well, you know what, Hal? I've heard some comments from some major league pitchers. I mean, or major league ball players. They're incensed about this. They really are.
No question about it. And I give them a lot of credit. I give them a lot of credit for valuing the game and showing some feeling and some passion for the game and the rules and regulations of the game. These guys didn't. These guys flaunted it. They just said, we want to win, so here's how we're going to do it.
Right.
And my understanding is this whole plot all started with an intern on the ball club.
Really? I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that.
Yes, I saw that too. An intern came up, one of these analytic guys came up with the idea, and apparently Beltran and Alex Cora really made it work. So that's why they're no longer managers.
Yeah, and also Mike Fiers, who was a pitcher, who's now on the A's. He was the one that, the whistleblower in this whole thing.
Yes.
And God knows if he didn't speak up, who would have? I mean, they interviewed Garrett Cole. Now, he left the Astros right away. There was no way, even if they offered him $100 million a year, that he was going to re-sign with them. And then they asked him, whether he knew anything about this. He said that he didn't know any of what was going on, which to me is pure nonsense.
I agree.
Of course.
Let me ask you this. If you're a player on the opposing team and you hear this garbage can being banged every so often, does it get your attention? You say, what is that? What's going on? What is that all about? Nobody asked. Nobody said anything. None of the players were suspicious. That I find astounding also.
Well, I think the opposing team did feel this was suspicious, and maybe some of them did try to say something, but I know some of them have been reported as saying that, they heard this. What surprises me, in telephonics and internet communications, there's such a thing as the last mile, and that's the last connection between the system itself and your computer. That's the last mile. And so in this case, they had this technological advantage, and it went from the whoever was spying into the clubhouse with the computer, but the last mile was banging on a garbage pail. So it just didn't seem to be 21st century technology at that end of the thing. It just, I get a kick out of that whole notion that all of this technology was used so someone could bang a garbage pail,
Yeah, there's a couple of...
I mentioned earlier that I had lunch with a guy I mentioned earlier that I had lunch with a guy who worked for the Mets for many years, and he told me a story. Now, we're talking 50 years ago, the Mets miracle, 1969. The catcher on the Mets was a guy named Jerry Grody, a very unpleasant sort of guy, but that's another story for another day. Grody went to the, and now you're talking about 1969. This is dark ages. This is the old-fashioned baseball. Grody went to the director of the television network that carried the Met games, and he said, do me a favor. When I'm catching, don't use the center field camera because they can pick up my signs with that camera just on the television, not through any technological hookups or anything. So Grody knew 50 years ago that it was in danger. The catcher's signs were in danger, and he tried to protect the signs as best he could by asking that the cameras not be on him when he's behind the plate. And so he knew, and that's 50 years ago. So you can imagine, I mean, it's gone on forever. Sign stealing is not a new thing in baseball. It's been around forever. But the difference is that they use technology and a very sophisticated technology to relay the signs to the batters, and that's not right. And it really hurts a person who has a feeling for baseball and for the history of the game. Don't forget, I read the other day that there are players who are contemplating suing the Astros, because if I'm a marginal player and I come into a game and the banging of the can, and all of a sudden I get lit up as a pitcher, and the next day I get sent to the minor leagues, I'm losing money. And there are several pitchers who I was reading the other day in the paper. It happened to Seth Lugo of the Mets. He was a starting pitcher and got lit up by the Astros, and they sent him to the bullpen. Now, he's been pretty successful as a relief pitcher, but it changed his career. It turned his career upside down, and it's happened to a lot of other players.
There was a relief pitcher on the Nationals. I can't think of his name at the moment, but he too came into a game. He was lit up by the Astros, and they sent him down immediately, and he didn't make it back.
That was Toronto, David. Toronto, yeah, who I never heard of. And he's claiming that they sent him down after he got bombed, and he's never made it back. Yeah. And his wife was pregnant at the time, and he feels his whole career was ruined.
Well, he's
by
right.
that.
He's probably right.
Yu Darvish, who got clobbered in the two starts he made in the 2017 World Series with the Dodgers, and both the games were in Houston. He was also saying that, claiming that, they knew everything, and it's just.
It leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. This thing has legs.
Sure.
This thing, the MLB tried to cut this off at the pass, and it doesn't seem to be working. This thing has an awful lot of legs.
You can't. It's so
outrageous. I know. Yeah.
You can't cut it off. You have to.
No.
You're going to have to sit back and swallow the consequences.
And even a legitimate batter who hit a home run or a double or whatever it might be without the assistance is also tainted, because
Absolutely.
You can't prove a negative. You can't prove that. No, I didn't know that. How can you prove it? You can't. So it does. It taints the whole game, and we're not going to hear the end of it throughout spring training and certainly into the season.
I always wondered why Mike Trout, who played on a team that was 72-90, got the MVP award in the American League. And I thought Bregman would have a shot at it, but again, now I know why.
Well, individual statistics are all out of kilter now. Because you look at the splits home and away for Altuve, for example. They're dramatically different. He hit over 350 at home. and didn't hit 200 on the road in 2017. Well, wait a minute. The same player, how did that happen? That happens because he didn't know what was coming on the road, and he knew what was coming at home. So that's just wrong. It's just flat out wrong. But and more than just being wrong, it just taints all the numbers, all the statistics, throw them all out the window, because who knows what's legitimate and what's not. It's the same thing with the PED people. You tell me that Alex Rodriguez hit 640 home runs, or however many he hit. Well, how many did he hit not on steroids? Tell me that, because I want to throw out all the ones he hit when he was on steroids. Can I do that? I can.
Look at Barry Bonds. Yeah.
Same deal. You know, I don't know which ones he hit while he was on steroids. I don't know.
That's why Harry Aaron. That's why most fans still recognize Harry Aaron as the all-time home run king. Yeah.
And they're still not making it into the Hall of Fame. That's a punishment too. That's a real punishment.
Well, I think that's a valid punishment, and it
bothers
I'm not
me
saying
it isn't.
Progress.
Oh yeah.
It bothers me when they make progress, because I think to myself, they're getting closer. They're getting closer. And
they are.
The voting people in the Hall of Fame, as you know, they've changed the electorate, and younger voters are coming on, and they may be more willing to forgive and forget. The older guys like myself would never forgive and forget. And so as a result, Bonds and Clemens are moving up on the standings, and I don't know if they will make it. I hope they don't, but they might. And that would be another offensive thing to me about the game that I love, the game I grew up loving.
Hal, do you have any Hal, do you have any regrets for not holding off on your Scandals book because of this?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Your book you wrote on Scandals. Do you have any regrets in not holding off for something like this, or that you have any plans to do a supplement on this?
No, I didn't know this was going to happen.
I know that, but do you plan on doing a supplement, addendum?
A second edition.
Nobody's asked me to yet.
Yeah, there's a second edition.
I haven't been asked to yet, but I'm here if they want me.
Well, here's a question along the same lines as what Alan is talking about. Clemens and Bonds have been pinched in the tuchus for what they did, but A-Rod is thinking that of maybe buying the Mets. Now, would Major League Baseball allow A-Rod, who can't get into the Hall of Fame, to buy a Major League Ball club?
Wait a minute, you say he can't get into the Hall of Fame. He's not eligible yet. Who knows what the vote will be when he's eligible? I don't know. I hope not.
He hasn't been out 5 years?
No, not yet.
2015 was his last season.
So I hope
maybe into 2016, some into 2016.
And do you think, he had a rivalry here in New York with the Yankees, with Jeter. Jeter was the shortstop, and he was the third baseman, and there was quite a rivalry. Now, Jeter buys into the Miami Marlins, right? You think that has any influence on A-Rod saying, gee, I'd like to buy into the Mets? He's not going to be there's one-upmanship there, and he's not going to be one-up by Jeter. He wants the same kind of attention that Jeter has.
Oh, he thinks
but Jeter was squeaky clean. You have A-Rod who has been tainted.
That doesn't
Do you want
bother
that
A-Rod.
kind of...
No,
I know. No.
He thinks he thinks he's overcome the whole, whether he was suspended for a year
and he's been embraced.
Suing everybody.
On television. He's now a broadcaster on Major League Baseball.
He's reinvented. He's reinvented himself. That's what A-Rod has done.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And that's part of his shtick now. And I guess he feels, okay, I'm now the squeaky clean guy because I reinvented myself. I married J-Lo. I married all this stuff. I've got my own TV show. So I'll go out and I've got $100 million or whatever it costs to buy the Mets, or billion, or I'll go out and buy it.
Part of it.
I happen to agree with you, Hal. I think that that A-Rod and Jeter certainly had a rivalry, and A-Rod probably feels, hey, I can't let Jeter get one up on me, so I'll go after the Mets.
I think that's true.
Yeah, but the question is whether in Major League Baseball, whether Manfred and the other owners would agree to allow Jeter to do. I mean, A-Rod to do this. Remember, there were several prospective owners for the Montreal Expos and other teams who were not allowed to go into the bidding because of their business practices and other backgrounds.
Yeah, but you have to remember, the Mets have come close to being sold a couple of times, most recently to the Steve Cohen, and the deals fell through. And they're anxious to find somebody who they can sell the team to. So they might turn look the other way as far as A-Rod is concerned. Because if he has the money, and if he's with a group that has the money, money talks and stuff walks. That's what Charlie Finley told me. So they might very well. I don't put anything past this crowd. I really don't.
No, right? Yeah, and it's getting more and more like Ringling Brothers Circus.
Oh, in the 50s, they wouldn't allow the St. Louis Browns to move to Baltimore unless Vex sold out.
Right.
Yeah.
This is going. We're going back 66 years in this already.
But then they let him back in with the White Sox.
He had to do that, sir. Reveal himself at the last minute with that.
Yeah.
That was a whole different case because back then, in the early 50s, O'Malley was running the National League and Topping and Webb were running the American League.
As Yankee owners.
Yeah.
Yes. Sure, because they ran the American League, certainly.
Oh yeah.
But
no question.
And that's the time when I became aware of baseball and what a wonderful sport it is. And you didn't have the scandals that we've lived through in the last 20 years between the PEDs and this thing now. It was clean.
True.
The game was clean. 9 innings, 3 outs, balls, strikes. I mean, it was a very simple game. And
you think this is a result of, Hal, do you think this is a result of free agency?
No. I think free agency certainly changed the face of the game, but I remember when Marvin Miller came along, his argument was, if you don't like working for the Associated Press, you could go work for the Daily News. And I thought, he's right. I have a freedom of moving around. Why can't a ball player move around? It makes sense. Made sense.
Oh, yeah, it does, yeah.
It's freedom of movement here in America, what used to be America, what we used to call America. You had freedom of movement, and you could choose to work where you wanted to work, provided you had the skills and the other employer wanted to hire you. You moved on if that's what you wanted to do. You had a freedom of choice, and ball players were denied that for 100 years, and that's not right. So I think
it was almost a case of slavery. It was like slavery.
Exactly.
They couldn't go anywhere.
Exactly. Indentured slaves. That's right.
Yep.
Now they were rewarded pretty well. They got a pretty good salary and they had a pretty good lifestyle. But nevertheless, what if I don't like to live in Pittsburgh? My apologies, Alan. But
okay.
What if I don't want to live in Pittsburgh? What if I want to live in Chicago instead? I should have the right to sell my services to a baseball team in Chicago.
Yeah, when the Messersmith decision came out, there was no. Yeah, everybody could have been an automatic free agent, no matter how many years of service that they had in, except that the players' union recognized that this is not like basketball or football, where you go directly from the college into major leagues, and that they said the team has X number of dollars invested in these players when they're minor leaguers, and that's when they settled on the 6-year free agency, the 5-year requesting a trade. The union didn't have to give anything up there. But
I know he was viewed as something of a clown, but my friend, the late Charlie Finley, once said we should make them all free agents every year. Now, there's a thought.
Yeah.
Everybody's a free agent after 1 year. Next year, you're a free agent again. So, I mean, that never got anywhere, of course, but it was an idea. You know, he came up with these ideas. So.
Well, you know, of course that wasn't a good idea because obviously fans have specific players that they like more than other players, and they've developed an affinity for the team. I mean, even today, despite all the big money, you say, well, you know, how can you turn down $300 million for 5 years, like Anthony Rendon, leaving a World Championship team where he was venerated and was now thought of as the leader of the team, and he moves out to California, Los Angeles, and you say, well, you know, yeah, it's a lot of money, but yet there's still a certain. I'm sure the first time he comes into Nats Park, he'll be booed. I believe that.
What was the reaction to Bryce Harper?
Well, you know, Harper did not have the same kind of reputation that Anthony Rendon. There was a lot of animosity toward Harper. I think he shot off his mouth a bit too much. But I always enjoyed watching him play, which is really, you know, that to me is what I want to see. If I want to see a ball player play, that's to me, that's his selling point, not what he shoots his mouth off to the press. You know, some of these guys don't talk at all to the press. So that doesn't bother me.
Today we had a fairly hilarious story out of the Mets camp today. We have a player who hasn't played for a year and a half. His name is Yoenis Cespedes, and he showed up today. He's rehabbed. He's all set to go. He's ready to go, and he showed up for the first day of training camp. And the writers came up to him, as they should, to ask him how he's doing and how his rehab is doing. And he said, I'm not talking today. I'm not talking tomorrow. I'm not talking at all this season. Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You have an obligation to talk. You have a right. You have to relate to the fans. The fans want to know how you're doing, and that's why I'm here to ask you. But that's what he said. He refused to speak to the press after a year and a half of being chased by wild boars on his farm and having ankle surgery and everything else. I mean, you know, it's goofy. The game has gone goofy on us. It really has.
Speaking of goofy, let's try to spend the rest of the time talking about that, what I consider to be a terribly insane rule about relief pitchers having to pitch to 3 batters before they can be changed or to the final out of the inning. What do you guys think of that rule?
Well, I got tired of seeing 4 or 5 pitchers in an inning, and left-handed specialists and right-handed specialists, and the pitcher strikes out 2 in a row in the inning, and he gets pulled out because he's a lefty instead of a righty. It's very, very wearying, and
yeah, but you know
I'm not a big fan of this rule, but I felt something had to be done.
They're monkeying with the strategy of the game, and that's something I don't like. This game is built on strategy, and which is one of the things that's so fascinating about it. And they're now fooling with the strategy of the game because left-handed pitchers pitch better against left-handed hitters than right-handed pitchers do, and vice versa. So that's why that came into play. That's why relief pitchers became specialists. And now you're monkeying with the strategy of the game. It's going to affect the outcome of games. And once again, I'm not one who's in favor of changing the game that I love. So.
Hey, speaking of which, remember about a couple of years ago, I don't remember his name, but there was a pitcher who was brought up who was ambidextrous, and he could throw as a lefty or a righty, and that would be the perfect solution. What's that?
He was in the Yankees farm system.
He never made it, huh? He might make it now.
There's a pitcher named Greg Harris. There were 2 Greg Harrises, and one of these guys was on the Rockies, which, of course, doesn't put him in the best situation to begin with. And he could pitch from both hands, but I think that they have to declare, they get the declaration that they have to pitch to X batter, either righty or lefty, and the batter, if he's a switch hitter, it makes things very interesting.
You bring up a good point, Alan. I mean, they allow switch hitters. Why not switch pitchers?
They're not in the same at bat, though.
But not in the same at bat, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, all right. Well, but I mean, you could declare, well, a lefty is coming up. I'm going to pitch lefty to him. The next batter comes up and he's a right hand. I'm going to pitch right hand, and you switch your glove around.
Wait a minute. What if I pinch hit for the lefty? The lefty is coming up. I'm going to pitch lefty. Now I'm the manager of the left-handed batters team, and I say, well, I'm going to send a right-handed batter up to bat against this left-handed pitcher. Is he allowed?
Well, they do that.
I have no idea. I have no idea what to do.
So, but the pitcher's the one who's stuck.
The
pitcher is the one who's stuck.
Well, you don't think it's Hal? You don't think it's a circus when they use 6 pitchers to pitch a 9-inning shutout?
That's what they're doing now.
I know that's what they're doing now. In the death of complete games, I mean, where you get 2 complete games and you lead the league. I mean, that whole thing drives me absolutely nuts.
Okay, tell me this. I'm writing an article right now about the great Babe Ruth, who, by the way, hit 714 home runs. I'm writing an article about him, and before he became a slugger, he was a pitcher, and a damn good pitcher.
92 and 46 lifetime record.
In 1917, he went to the mound for the Red Sox to face the Washington Senators. And the first batter he faced, the umpire behind the plate, was a man named Brick Owens. Ball 1. And the Babe wasn't pleased with that call, and he mouthed off a little bit. Ball 2. Now the Babe glared at Brick Owens. Ball 3. Now the Babe was getting really hot under the collar. Ball 4, and the batter, Ray Morgan was his name, walks to first base. The Babe comes down off the mound and confronts Brick Owens. Owens says, "Get back on the mound." The Babe says, "You straighten your calls out. You're killing me here." And the umpire says, "Get back on the mound. I'm going to throw you out of the game." The Babe says, "You throw me out of the game, I'll punch you in the mouth." "You're out of the game." Babe hauls off and hits the umpire. Well, that's not a good thing. So they bring in a pitcher named Ernie Shaw to relieve Babe Ruth. Ernie Shaw goes to the mound. The guy on first base gets thrown out trying to steal, and Ernie Shaw retires the next 26 batters. Was it a no-hitter?
There was no-hitter, a combined no-hitter.
A combined no-hitter, right?
But it's not a perfect game because a man reached base.
That's right, but it's
that's true,
no-hitter.
right?
A number of years ago, they
about to be suspended.
A number of years ago, they did a thing where games like the Harvey Haddix game or any perfect games that exceeded were broken up after 9 innings because the game went extra innings, and they shortened 7 innings of whatever no hitters. They didn't allow those, and they did away with all these things. As far as official records are concerned, and because the Ernie Shaw thing that you just described was listed as a perfect game for years, and then when they did this rehashing of this, they said, well, a man reached first base in this game, no matter that he got thrown out trying to steal second. So by definition, a man reaches base. It's not a perfect game, but it still goes into the books as a
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.